trying to regain my voice that the enemy tried to take away from me. One of the things that God told me, he said, the more you keep quiet, the more the enemy has to hold over your head. And so this panel is about women that you will hear today, that they regain their voice. You're going to find out what hope look like for them, what empowerment look like for them, and what does resilience look like for them today. A lot of times we talk about domestic violence, and we talk a lot, and it's just important about those that are going through it. But a lot of times people forget the ones that have overcome it and had to rebuild their life. Because to be honest, going through it is hard, but it's even harder trying to rebuild your life. And so this is a vision that God gave me, and I said from 2018, I didn't do it again to 2025. And so when I did it then, I said, okay, God, he had already told me it wasn't going to be a one-time thing, that I was supposed to keep doing it. So this year I had to be intentional as well as be obedient. So I'll tell you a little about myself. Women of Refined Gold was started in 2013. And it started because of my own history at the age of 16 when I experienced, I guess you say youth dating violence, but we just say domestic violence. I can't say that was something I grew up seeing. That was something I knew what it was. I didn't even never heard the word, and now this is maybe 1997, maybe, I'm sure what my date is. But during that time, I went through a lot, and I didn't tell anybody. A lot of times you get quiet because a lot of times you're wanting to protect the people you love. You're wanting to, you also feel shame. Like, how am I in this situation? Why did this have to happen to me? And so I went through that, and even though there are things my parents knew, but I wouldn't openly tell them this. I would make up stuff. It didn't make sense, but it made sense to me at the time. So, and then a lot of times I didn't tell my parents because if I wasn't prepared to leave, I didn't want to get people involved and hurt it. So a lot of times when you're trying to understand domestic violence, you have to hear beyond the words. You have to hear beyond, a person may be putting his mask on, but you never know why that mask is on. And so we have to learn how to understand the mindset rather than trying to understand the why. Why do you stay? Why won't you leave? Those are words that kind of put a defense up. So we have to be careful with our words. So I'll fast forward maybe going through that, and I started going to this church, and that was the first time I openly opened up to my pastor at the time. He just connected me to some other ladies in the church. But as I began to get more open and transparent about what I was going through, I remember this one particular lady that, when I was having anxiety, when I was having a bad day, I would call her and she would pray for me. She would, and through that process, it was helping to build me up. It was helping me to feel empowered. But at the same time, there was a lot of fear. That was, wanting to tell my mom, wanting them to understand, but because of the shame, because I felt like there was a certain level of expectation that my parents had for me, and I felt like I had failed that. Because even at the age of 14, I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter, and I think it was probably 5 months or so before I actually, did I ever admit it? I probably didn't, And so, and so now that was shame that came in because now I'm 14 years old, pregnant. I'm still a child. I don't know what that looks like. But we're gonna fast forward because we got some great testimonies that I believe is gonna educate and empower everybody that's here today. But as I got through the process, I remember getting to a place in my life. And I said, Lord, I have to learn to read the word for myself. I have to learn to pray for myself. And so as I did that, I remember being home one day. And I don't know if I was praying or what, but I just heard God say, I'm refining you as gold. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And he took me to Job 23:10. And it says, for I know the way you take. When you come forth good as gold. And I said, okay, it's got to be God, because I didn't know that was in there. But he knew I didn't quite understand, and he broke it down more. He said gold goes through the process of purification. And in order for the impurities to be burnt off, it has to go through a high level of heat. He said you're going to go through some things and you're going to feel some things, but when you come out, you're coming out good as gold. And I held on to that, really still not knowing what to do with it. But I left that relationship in 2009. Stayed in there about 17 years. Mentally I was gone, physically I was still there. But I remember getting to the place and I said, Lord, because fear will keep you in a place longer than you want to be. Fear will stagnate you. And so I began to allow the enemy to say, you're safer if you stay. Because at the mindset, well, at least I know where they are. At least I don't have to watch my back. And, for someone who hasn't gone through that, they don't understand that. But that becomes that survival mode that you're in while still in it. And so I remember asking, said, God, where are you? Why aren't you helping me? And so when I made up in my mind, I said, Lord, whatever has to happen is just going to happen, but I'm walking away. And I made up in my mind May 9th, 2009, that I was going to walk away. And when I walked away, it was nothing like the enemy tried to magnify. There was some, resistance with it, but it was not like the enemy to say, well, what if he tried to kill you? What if he tried to stalk you? The what ifs tried to come in. But I had to make up in my mind that I couldn't do it anymore. My daughters were not abused, but just seeing how it impacted me, it impacted them as well. Even to today, my oldest, she's 31. She don't trust people. She's never been in a relationship. She don't have friends other than her business. And so a lot of that is a lot of the pain. It was almost like she was my protection because I told people I stopped crying because it was a sign of weakness. So I stopped crying, and there are times she sat in my lap and she's wiping my tears. So how do you deal with that? So you just don't do it because you're protecting her. So there are things that they saw. There are things they saw how it impacted me. Even I tell people now, there are things that were blocked that I still don't remember to this day. I've forgotten. But I remember God said, I'm going to reawaken your emotions. Because I suppressed all of those things. I shut down. I didn't feel to protect myself. And I'm still in that space and place in a lot of things. But I tell you all, when I decided to walk away, 2 days after I walked away, God said, if you want me to bless you, you got to forgive him. And I'm like, God, it only been 2 days. You know everything he done. I'm trying to rationalize, but he said it again. And in that moment, I couldn't base it on how I felt. I had to make a conscious decision that I was going to choose forgiveness. Because we think about it, one of the things God said, you're holding them hostage to a debt he can never repay. And so when we choose to hold on to unforgiveness, we're hurting ourselves. Because they're going on, they're doing whatever, and we in this cage. It's this saying I heard that when offense come in, offense go up. And so I had fences all around it, and even now I think I still have them. No, I know I still have them. And so that is how the name of Women of Refined Gold came about. He gave it to me when I was still in it. 7 years after I left, I was at a community event here, and the guy asked me about the name. And he said, well, my church wanted to know how gold goes through the process. The lady, she went out, the guy told her what happens. But the one thing that stuck out to me was, she said, well, how do you know when the gold is refined? And he said, when I can see myself in it. And all I could say was, wow. And God took me back to when I first asked him, where are you? Why aren't you helping me? He said, I've been there the whole time, but I had to take you through a process. So a lot of times we want to go through that quick process where they say we want the microwave fix and not the stairs. There's some things that he had to do in me. There's some things he had to change even in my mindset. There are things he had to the healing, the good, the ugly, whatever that he had to do, though I didn't want to go through that, because a lot of time we can embrace the pain. We'll do that, but we don't know what he has for us down the road. And so we have to be able to feel and be in some places longer than we want to be. But I tell people, I don't find it strange he gave me Job, because we all know the story of what Job endured. Because at the end of the day, God still restored him despite of what he had gone through. So I wanted to give you that. But I also want to share this, and I'm going to pass the mic. Last night I was at an event, and they were talking about unsilenced trauma, how we have to unsilence this trauma. And one of the things when I left, God began to tell me, he said, we talk about how we have to have high standards when it comes to relationships. But he said, no, we need to have God's standards. Because high standards can be unhealthy as well, depending on what view we're looking from, depending on how we grew up and what we were taught. So the high don't always mean healthy, but if we do God's standards, he won't fail us. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So
Hi everyone, I'm Roy Lisa Derrico, and for myself, domestic violence is something that I went through from a young age, starting at 7 years old, but not just within, it started from family, and then when I got into my own, my adult years, then it went on to relationships. The abuse that I sustained, it's pretty, it was torturing. And I did not realize that when I went through the abuse, the reason why I stayed was because I referenced love with hurt. Everyone that loved me hurt me, so that to me was the norm. So I stayed, and I dealt with the abuse with my first marriage, because I also felt as though it was important to stay because of my kids. Me being in a relationship at 16, I thought to have a healthy relationship was to make sure that, the parents stayed together for the benefit of the children, not knowing the outcomes of what the hurt that happens with the children as well, witnessing the abuse. And quite like H.E.R stated with our daughter, my oldest son, which was at that time was 5, he used to sit in my lap and wipe the blood from my head and tell me one day I'll have a good man to come along and bring me flowers. He thought that was being a good man at 5 years old. And walking through and picking up my hair that was pulled out throughout the house. And I did not get out of that relationship to 23 years later. And I stayed in that abuse, but it taught me a lot. But another key point with the high standards. I set high standards for myself after that relationship, right? And I received those high standards. With those high standards came a cost. So I say recently because as of July of last year, came out of a domestic violence situation that could have cost me and my son, my youngest son, our lives. And I thought it was, I thought the relationship was beautiful, but it was the representative the whole entire time. And because of those high standards that he presented to me, I thought that was the best he was going to get. I thought that maybe good men come with, some abuse. You gotta, take something in order to, be treated properly. So I didn't, think anything else outside of that. But as I began to go through it and began to pray and ask God, why am I still enduring? Why am I going through this? Because I ignored the red flags. The red flags were there from the beginning. When, first started dating, and he would measure how short my dress was it long enough? actually physically like get a measuring tape to see. That was red flags. Not wanting me to be around family, that was red flags. He wanted to isolate me. And I didn't realize those things. But because I was turning a blind eye to the good treatment, you know. And the incident that took place, and I'm thankful because he wasn't able to get to the gun in time to take my life or my son's life. But my son, he was 17 at the time last year, and if it wasn't for him, he would have taken my life. But my son walked in and caught him, and he basically prevented him from, he knocked him out, prevented him from hurting me. And I was able to get upstairs to the guns to put them away and lock the door before he could get to them. But within the flash of a moment, that could have changed, because 2 days later, after that incident, the same exact scenario happened with a lady and her son, and they both lost their lives. And the son was 17, just like my son was 17. And I was like, God, that could have been me and my son, you know? But I'm thankful. And what God has taught me out of, you know, these experiences and the strength that I have, because a lot of people's like, oh, how you know, you seem like you're fine. Like, I think what I think it is because I've always had God there, right? But I'm gonna tell you, I would turn it off. When he tell me something, I turn it off because I want to satisfy what Lisa wanted, even though he was forewarning me. And now it's like, no, you need to listen. If I say leave, leave. No matter how it feels. If I give you a warning, go. My purpose for being here is to help bring awareness and to help women to be able to get over the hurt and knowing that they are enough, because I always place the blame. I said, well, I've been abused all my life. Maybe it's something with me. Maybe it's something I'm doing that's attracting that person or that's causing them to do these things to me. And that wasn't so. I had to realize that I had to love me, because I didn't really love me. I didn't love myself. I loved the person that I was loving more than I loved me. And so within the process, mentally I had left the relationship a year prior to the incident happening, and I felt it. God gave me, you know, he always gives you warning before destruction. God told me, he said, if you do not leave this, he said, if you do not leave this relationship, you're going to get caught up in the wrath. Because at the time as well, I didn't know that my husband was atheist when I married him. Because he was preaching sermons and everything, and I thought that he was a godly man. See, I had high standards, and I was looking at the representative, but not knowing who the person really was. And so he felt as though that he had the authority to take my life. You know, he had the authority over my life. But, you know, with all that knowledge and all the experience that God has given me, he wants me to tell the next person to love yourself and to know that you're more than enough. And you do not have to settle. There isn't any settlement in Christ. There's no settlement. And don't listen to the fleshly desire. It's okay to be alone. A lot of people are afraid to be alone. And they just want to have that companionship. But it comes with a price. So there's a purpose for all of us being here. And my sole purpose for me is to bring the awareness that you're more than enough, and that it's okay to be alone, and to seek God and do not turn a blind eye, a deaf ear when he speaks to you and tell you to walk away.
Hello everyone, my name is Celestine Craig. I was born and raised in around now. I did not grow up in a home where there was domestic violence. I didn't know what it was. The guy that I met in the second semester of my senior year. I was 17 years old. He was 6 years my senior. He was in college. He also served in the military. Initially, I was not interested in him. And as I said earlier, I came from a family that there was no domestic violence. We started dating. Now, I loved all the attention. He sent me flowers every week. He called me every break. He would come to my school whenever he wasn't in class. When we went out, if anyone looked at me or said anything, he'd like give them a look, and sometimes he'd say, you know, hey, don't look at my girl. Me being young, dumb, naive, I thought it was cute. I'm like, this guy is really, really into me. Well, being that I was not raised in a domestic violence situation, I didn't realize I actually had walked into a trap. Those were the signs right there: possessive, controlling, and I just didn't know. So part of my platform is trying to inform those that are not aware of what domestic violence is, how it starts, because they are meticulous in what they do. They make it look like you are their world. They would do anything for you. The fact of the matter is, they see you as a possession. All of us, whatever we possess, we can do whatever with. So once they have you locked in because you think that they're so in love, the spiral starts. Well, during the course of the relationship, I became pregnant. Of course, that broke my parents' heart because they had high expectations for me. I didn't know what to do. So being that my parents stayed together until death, they were married for 54 years, I wanted to right my wrong. So when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. So I went from my parents' home to my husband's home. I worked part-time. I was we both were in college. He became more and more controlling. And at one point, once he started working for a local authority, because he worked in law enforcement, he became abusive. At this point, we had our first child. I wasn't working. So I was supposed to bow to him. Whatever he said, he would come in and I could be sitting there watching television. He would get in front of the TV and try to cause me to go into an argument with him. I wouldn't do it. So he then would just start physically abusing me. He would slap me, stomp me, throw me into walls. He'd leave the house, come back, and they call it the honeymoon phase. He'd come back and buy me something, or love on me, be affectionate, say sweet things. So I'm like, hey, well, maybe he had a stressful day at work. Oftentimes, we women that are abused, we take that onto ourselves, like she said. We've done something to agitate our partner. No, that is just how they are, but again, not knowing. So as time went on, I actually stayed in my marriage for 4.5 years. And I came to the conclusion, because at this point we had 2 sons surviving. I said, I don't want my sons to grow up like this. I don't want them to think this is what a healthy relationship is, because there's nothing about this that is healthy. I also do not want to put 2 young men out there to perpetrate against somebody else's daughter. So I made the decision, I'm going to divorce him. And at the time I didn't work. He made all the money. So people were like, what is it? Which I didn't tell anybody, because my father was killed. I had to make a decision. I said, well, at least I finished college. It's time for you to go into find you a job. Because I wasn't going to be out there just living any kind of way, because I had 2 boys and I had a standard for myself. So once I got a job, which I had to fight with him tooth and nail for that, I had to tell him that I would tell my father everything he had done to me in order to get the job. So once I got the job, I had to plan, how are you going to get out of here? So I started saving my money, and I said, I'm going to divorce him. Well, then I found out about the affair. A lady called me at work and told me everything. Came to the job, left cards and stuff on my phone. I immediately went to file for divorce with my bosses. They didn't know what was going on, and they were so hurt. They actually wrote the check for me to go file for my divorce. They're like, if you want out, we'll get you out. And that's what happened. So from that, I basically left. Didn't tell him anything. I didn't even tell my parents that I was leaving, because I wanted their reaction to be authentic when he called and said we were missing. So when he found out where I was, he stalked me, he ran me off the road, this and the other. Long story short, to make it clear, we come to the week of the divorce. He calls and he says, if you should, because when we got married, I had him do 30 minutes. He looked at me and he said, do you know what we did today? I said, yeah, we got married. He said, well, you know what that means, right? I was like, yeah, we got married. He said, so what that means is, until death do us part. Now, I personally was not offended, because I didn't intend to leave him. I loved him. I intended to be with him for life. But after everything happened, I realized that it really was a verbal threat. But I didn't know, because I didn't come out of that situation. So 4.5 years in, he's now working at the local police department. We get that out there. And I've come to the conclusion, I'm gonna leave because I have a job. He called me the Monday before the divorce, and he said, if you show up, I'm not gonna be responsible for what happens to you. At this point, after the abuse, verbal, every kind of abuse there was, I sustained from him. I felt like a dead woman walking. I was numb inside. I couldn't even feel. And this is what I told him. I said, you do whatever you got to do to me, because I really feel like a dead woman walking. He said, okay, that's how you want it. And he hung the phone up. I didn't hear another word. I mind you, he was calling my phone every day at work, hanging up in my face, following me, stopping me, running me down the track. That's what I was going through to that point. So when he hung that phone up, I didn't hear anything. But in my mind, I'm thinking, he's not going to do anything because you major in criminal justice. You lock people up every day. You know what that life is. You don't want it. Well, I was wrong. The divorce was granted Friday. I went out to party hard. I thought my grandma told me not to. I felt like I'm free, so I'm gonna live my first hurrah without getting out of that situation. Well, he waited outside my grandma's home. I got home about 3:30 that morning from my park station, and I heard a body in motion, and my brain said, that body in motion is coming towards you. So I had my bag phone in my hand, and I looked at the distance from the door to where I was on the driveway. And I said, there's no way I'm gonna make it to that door before this body comes over this gate. Well, as I turned to go back to my car, he was leaving over the gate with the bandana over the lower portion of his face. I instantly knew it was him. So I wish they would have had the little things now where you can unlock the car. Oh, I'd have been free. I wouldn't have been able to see you today. But they didn't have that, so I'm shaking trying to get the key in there. Didn't make it. So I took my bag phone, swung and hit him in the head. I missed. So I'm like, okay, now I got to run. I'm running, but I'm not screaming because I don't want to wake the neighbors up. I've always tried to be considerate to people. So I'm running, this cat of mouse. He finally catches me. The only reason he called me, from the reason he took my shirt and he put it over my face, which blinded me. He then got me by my legs, pulled me between my two cars, sat on my back, and proceeded to slash me constantly with a knife. The whole time during the attack, I'm begging and I'm pleading, please don't kill me. What about our sons? Please don't kill me. I had heard a still small voice that said, you keep begging him for your life. Stop begging him for your life and begging him for your life. I instantly knew it was God. I took a moment and I said, God, if you say it, I promise you, I will do whatever you want me to do. I'll be in church every time the doors are open. When I tell y'all, it was less than 8 minutes. My grandmother opened the door, screaming. He didn't stop her. She's old. He was intimidated by her. My aunt did it as well. So she called my aunt. My aunt looked and she said, get off, and she started running in my direction. He turns, he sees her, he runs off into the night. So from that point, ended up at the hospital, almost died. Injuries were substantial. So I'm just give you a quick synopsis and wrap this up. I was told that I'd never use his hand again. This is a possibility that I would never use his hand again. At the time I was a secretary. I can tell y'all I type with it every day. My head, the injuries were so substantial that they had to staple my head back together. They said actually had he gone 1 inch deeper, I would have died from that one cut alone. So, multiple cuts on my scalp. Black people have keloid skin, which vast majority of us, which means they heal raised up, and they said possibility that hair won't grow in those areas. Well, I'm pleased to report to y'all today that I have hair underneath this wig. They said I probably would never look well enough to go out in public, because at the time my face was, my lip was down here. When they sewed it back together, it was swollen up to here, so I'm like breathing. But it's like breathing, my lips is way up, it's just that big. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I said, God, I just thank you for leaving me here. I believe that is why I look the way I look today. I thank God for that. But the prognosis that was given to me, when the doctor gave it to me, I believed in God, but I wasn't a spiritual person, but I knew there was a God, because my grandmama kept me in church. So when the doctor gave me the prognosis of what I possibly would never be able to do, I spoke a word. Didn't realize it was a word, but now that I'm saved now, I understand I spoke a word. It's a big situation. When he said, I will not use his hand again, I said, I will use his hand again. I will go back to my job as a secretary. I did that. I said, I will look decent enough to my brother. I think God did a pretty good job. I told him, I said, my hair will grow back. I do have hair, but I won't show that to y'all. So I say that to say this, God is good. Without him, I wouldn't be here. And you hear that still small voice. Know that that's God, and I would admonish you to do whatever he tells you to do. I don't care how hard your journey is. It may look like you're losing, but you're always winning if you got God on your side. And one other thing, he wrote our end before our beginning. So that means he knew the middle. So that being said, I don't care what it looks like in this life. It may look like you're losing. As long as you got God on your team, you're on the winning side.
It was the spring of 1993. I was 16 years old. And my godbrother at the time asked me to go to the prom with this young man who later became my husband. He said he'd get anybody to go to the prom with him. And he said, please do it for me. Should have known then, but I didn't. So he did go to the prom, and after the prom, he was really, really nice. He started buying me things, gifts all the time, and I fell for that. Later in the fall, we were out riding, and we just stopped at this park. And at 16, he puts a gun to my head and tells me if I ever tried to leave him, he would kill me. I was in that relationship for 26 years. Out of those 26 years, I was married to him for 11. Every kind of abuse you can think, I've endured. Psychologically, mentally, verbally, mostly physically. A couple of my friends in the room went through it with me. He always put up a facade. Everybody thought he was that guy. He was so nice. But when we got behind closed doors, I remember he loved to drink. He was sloppy drunk, and he loved going to strip clubs. He would go out, come in, be drunk. And I remember one night he was so drunk, I could smell it through his skin, so I went in the bedroom just to get away. Next thing I know, I was awakened to a blow to the head, being cursed out. Just always putting me down. Nobody wants you. You're fat, you're this, you're that. Out of that relationship came 2 kids, a boy and a girl, twins that are 31 years old now. I remember thinking, I can't let my children think this is normal. I can't let my son think it's okay to treat a lady this way. I can't let my daughter think it's okay to accept this kind of behavior. Because a lot of that happened in front of them. You got to realize when you're in this and there's other people in the house that you're not the only victim. A lot of mental issues, a lot of social issues come from stuff like that. I soon realized that he had some mental issues. He used to jump on me so much, I would call the police. I remember one time I called the police, and as they were putting him in the car, he looks back and said, you know I'm gonna get you when I get out. In front of the police, he didn't care. He tried to run me off the road. It was just a verbal abuse all the time. He had work, I was a sole provider. He would take money out of a joint account. It was just the worst 26 years of my life. I cried so much. I remember, I have 8 brothers. My dad and my brothers would kill me. So people used to ask me, well, why didn't you tell them? Because in my mind, I felt if I told them, they would kill him, and then they would go to jail. So some sick way, I felt like I was protecting them. And I remember I cried so much. I just cried all the time. I would go to work with the mask on. And I'm going to take these glasses off because a lot of people would always say to me, you got those bags under your eyes. You must be tired. But they're not bags, they're tear ducts. The doctor said because I cried so much that I would have to have this surgery to have it removed. Well, I decided that I didn't want to have surgery because it's part of my story. And so I would keep it this way and I would share that with other people. So I remember crying, and we had gotten into a really bad fight. And let me say, I had the best in-laws in the world. They didn't know. That didn't happen in their home, so I just could not understand where this came from. And then when they found out, they became my protectors too. But I remember getting on my knees and praying. I stayed in the Bible. We would go to church together. You would think everything was normal in the Jackson household, but that was not the case. I remember praying, and there was 3 scriptures that I stood on. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. You can redeem the broken, and I was." And Psalm 37:4 says that God will give you the desires of your heart. I desire to be out of that. So many people tell their story from the grave. I didn't want to be that person. God, please help me get out of this. I remember just booing, crying, God, please. And the Bible says in Matthew 6:33, "Seek God and his kingdom first, and all those things will be added unto you." And that's what I began to do. And I said, God, please, whatever it takes to get me out of this relationship, God, please, I can't die. I can't die this way. I can't leave my children. And I remember it was the summer of 2008. I took my mother to Florida to see her 2 sisters. And when I got back, there was this lady, similar to what you said, called my house. And, not my house, called my phone. And she said, "Well, I've been in your house. Your husband told me that you was an unfit mother, that you didn't want your kids." So I'm still stuck on she been in my house. Even though I heard, all I heard was she been in my house. Be careful what you ask God for, because he has a sense of humor.
Yes, he does.
I'm telling you. I asked him to get me out of it. I ain't say how. That right there, that's all it took. I went from, he lived in 110 pounds soaking wet. So, but in my mind, he had my mind to think that because he always jumped on me, and I'm a lot bigger than him. But when I found out about the woman, he came home, and I'm telling you, everything just surfaced to the top. I'm going to church, but I cursed him out. And I got a strength that I never knew I had. We started in the living room, we ended in the bedroom. And I remember him saying, "You trying to kill me?" I was choking him, and I don't know where the strength came from. He said, "You trying to kill me?" I said, "If you throw up on my floor, I am going to kill you." And after that, I said, "You have 30 minutes to get out of my house." My son, prior to the last incident when he jumped on me, my son had to be 11 or 12. He was in the bathroom during the whole episode. And as always, when it happened, he would leave. My son was in there with a knife. And I said, before I let my son go to jail, God, I got to get out of this. And that lady doesn't realize what she thought she was claiming ended up being my escape to get rid of him. And that's exactly what happened. I want to be able to say to the next person, we hear it all the time on the news, even to this day. It seems like it's more prevalent now than ever, where people are taking their spouses or their significant others' lives, and some are turning it on themselves. It's so cruel now. My prayer was, God, don't let me tell my story from the grave. And when I did that, guys, let me tell you, I still have to deal with again. So many people like, but you're so pretty. I don't see that. I thank God I'm still here. I need to say that. I thank God that I'm still here. I don't trust people now, but I can tell you this, I'm happier at 59 than I've been in my life. God gave me another chance. I want to be a voice. I want to be an advocate. I want to be an ambassador for those that are going through, to tell them, hey, trust God. Trust God. When you think you can't, God can. I can tell you that. When you think you can't, God can. Trust him. Stay in his word. Believe what he says, and God will make a way. If I can save just one soul, that's what I believe what I went through this for. It wasn't for me. It was just to help somebody else.
Amen, amen, amen. To God be the glory. Woo, the race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to the one who endures to the end. Amen. Well, I'm on the other side of the story. I wasn't physically, my name is Demetra Mock-Mims, and I was born and raised here in Montgomery, Alabama. I am married. We have 6 children together, and we have 14 grandchildren, 9 grandsons and 5 granddaughters. And I bless the Lord for each one of them. They are the ones who inspired me to write the books that I have written. And my stories, like I said, is the other side. It was my mother who was abused. My father abused my mom, and that's what my book is about. I'm that little girl. I'm talking about from that little girl standpoint, where I saw my dad beat my mom. I saw my dad pull my mom's hair. I saw my dad stomp my mom because he done been out with the ladies. I saw my mom go to other women's houses and pull my dad out of those houses. There was an instance where she went and pulled him out of the house, and my little brother was with them, and she dragged him out the house, and he was naked. It was one hot summer day, and she was dragging her son out the house at the age of 3, because he was laid up in another room where he was with a lady. I saw my mom go grab my dad from another lady's house. She couldn't get to him, so he jumped out the top window, and he ended up messing up his arm, and she ended up stabbing the lady. So my side of this is to warn and to make the women who are in abusive relationships to get out before you get to the point where my mom went to. Now that was just with my dad. For some reason, my mom was always attracted to those who abused her. I don't know where that come from, but she was attracted to that type of man. My mom ended up going to prison because she met a younger guy he was 5 years younger than her. We didn't know my mom was being abused. We were adults at the time. I lived in my house. My siblings lived in their own houses. But I received a call one night to come and get my mom. She was in a social savings club, and they were all over at the house, and they was getting ready to go. Now my mom was beautiful, and men loved her. My mom was a big flirt as well. But this particular night, this man had a problem because men were speaking to my mom. She can't help if somebody speak to her, like most of you. You couldn't help because you're beautiful and people want to speak to you. My husband happy he got a good looking wife. He just be like, this mine right here. You can look all you want to. But some men just can't take that. And he was one of those. He couldn't take that. So this particular night, some guys was talking to my mom, and she was brushing them off because she knew her man was jealous. So she didn't want no problems. So he walked behind her in this particular house. They was getting ready to clean up because they had a fish fry this particular day, and it was getting ready to end. And he walked behind her because he had saw the men, talking to her all night. And then he was drunk. It probably had nothing to do with the man. He was just drunk, and he just wanted to let loose. And he followed her in the house. But when he followed her in the house, he said, you better hurry up. We gotta go. It's gonna be some problems when you get home. I know this because this is what she told us. Well, he walked out the door, and when she walked back in the house, she armed herself with a knife. She armed herself with a knife because she said, I'm not gonna get in this car with this fool without something to protect me. And that's another thing, ladies. And teach your children is, don't open your mouth until you seek counsel. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you kill somebody. Don't open your mouth until you seek counsel, because she ended up telling the police that, which made that premeditated. Okay? Because she could have easily picked up a knife from the table. But because she said she armed herself with it, even though it was for her safety, she did it. So she armed herself, and the next time that he came to the door, fussing, all this, she came through the door, she was getting ready to leave. He said, didn't I tell you it's time to leave? And she said, well, I'm coming, I gotta help them clean up. And when he came through the door, he just punched. And she went back, she pulled a knife, and she stabbed him one time. And one time was fatal. So I got a call, I was in the bed, I was pregnant. At the time, I was with my first husband. I only been married 2 times now, first husband. We got over there, they called and said, come and see about your mama. Something happened. So I thought something happened to my mom, and I saw yellow tape and everything. And they said, your mom has gone to the police station. It's like, what happened? Well, she stabbed him. Oh my God. So I went to the police station. But by the time we got to the police station, she was telling us to go and check on him. So I was like, okay, he's gone to the hospital. I didn't know he was dead at the time. My uncles came, and they told us at that time he died. So she wanted us to go and check on him, somebody who abused her, but that is the victim of abuse. They always concerned about that man. Always concerned about the man regardless of how he's treated her. That's one of the things that the women go through. But my mom went through that. And my mom ended up pleading guilty to murder. She only got 3 years. The Tuesday that she was sentenced at the Montgomery County Courthouse, she was in DOC custody at that time. A week later, my mom had a major stroke. So my mom went from Baptist Hospital to, she went from county jail to Baptist Hospital, where she was there for about 2 months. She stayed there for about 2 months until she was able to leave the hospital. She left not even walking, but she was still able to leave because her vitals, everything was good, but she wasn't good. So when she left the hospital, she had to go directly to the infirmary at the prison because she was custody of DOC. So imagine how we were feeling as children, like we had the best mom ever. My mom was my best friend. Just to know that now I gotta see my mom in prison. So even after that, it took us about a month to even get our first visitation with her. And just to go in there and see your mom in an infirmary, in a prison, there's nothing that a child wants to see. There's nothing that a child wants to see. And I just wish, my mom had the strength to leave. Like I said, we didn't know he was abusing her. We were grown. And my mom was a private person. She was, most women don't tell, like y'all said, that they're being abused because they don't want those brothers to come and beat them or kill them. Because my uncles did say he would have been dead if they had known that he was beating them. But I'm just here just to bring awareness to anyone who is going through that, to not to have to get to that point. They were blessed. They didn't make it to that point. Thank God they still here to tell their story. My mom ended up staying in prison for 2.5 years. While she was there, her health was still declining. It was at one point where they were taking women to other states because Tutwiler prison was overcrowded. So I was concerned. I said, my mom is not healthy enough to go to a whole other state. So I called the attorney, who was a court-appointed attorney, an awesome attorney. She had an awesome judge, Judge Tracy McCooley. The lady was awesome. The only reason why she gave my mom time because somebody died. And my mom did plead guilty because guess what? She still loved him. She didn't want to kill him, but she had no other choice. It was either him or her. Well, he got my mom back in court after 2.5 years. He asked how she was doing. He said she should be coming up. I should be able to get her back in court. He said because she should have never been there. We all know she should have never been there. But he ended up getting her back in court, and we went to court. It was the Friday before Mother's Day, and they granted my mom to be released on that day. So when she got home, my mom still was never the same. She didn't even want to stay in the house that she left. My mom didn't go outside. My mom ended up having more strokes, more mini strokes, to the point where she couldn't even eat anymore. She was being fed through a feeding tube. But guess what, y'all? Through it all, my mama still kept her faith. She still kept hope. She still empowered others, and she still was resilient through all of that. So I know that I'm here today to give somebody hope, empower somebody, and let them know that you can still be resilient. And guess what happened after that? I promised myself, I said, I ain't never going back to prison, going to visit nobody. I don't care who get locked up. I'm not going back to visit nobody in prison. Y'all, I'm going to tell you, 9 years later, guess who went back to minister to the ladies at Tutwiler prison? So I became a minister to go and speak to those ladies at Tutwiler prison. Because guess what? God had already built me up for that. He already built me up for that. So just know that what you're going through is just a process. It's just a process to your destiny and everything that God has for you. And it's for you to go back to inspire others. Grab somebody else and bring them to Christ. Because that's number one. I got to bring you to Christ. If I can't bring you to Christ, then, babe, I'm just going to pray for you. So that is our job. That's why we're here on this earth. This is why we go through things. Because we have a purpose. But purpose doesn't come easy. Purpose is bought with a price. It's bought with a price. So don't fret what you're going through. But if you are in a relationship that is not healthy, get out. Get out. As these ladies already told you, because at the end of the day, when you leave, you might be saying, man, why I stayed there? Why did I stay there? What do you have to offer me? Because guess what? God can do a way better job than any man can do. Any man can do. And it's okay to be alone. It is okay to be alone. And going through that with my mom and my dad, and going through with my mom with the boyfriend, it was hard for me to trust men. I went through mental abuse, never physical, but y'all know mental is just as worse as physical. It sticks with you. It's hard for you to trust anybody. It's hard for you to believe in anybody. But that's why we got to go to God. We got to know who holds the key to our life. And that is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I pray that this little message bless somebody. And like I said, if you're in this type of relationship, get out. It's not worth it. God bless you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Griffin. I am a survivor of domestic violence. All these ladies, I take notes. I was taking notes from everybody to kind of hear everybody's story and kind of do some comparisons. Some of these stories sound very, very similar. I wrote a book called, this is not a promotion, but this is kind of like a shameless plug. But I wrote a book called Dear Sis, Dance in the Rain. And it's a take on how when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. It's not an autobiography, but it's basically some of my shared stories, some of the things that I've been through in survival mode and now warrior mode when I was going through some of the things that I was going through. And this book was to remind other people, other women, that if I can do it, anybody can do it. It basically started, I was in my early 20s. I met my first son's father. He seemed like he was just everything that I ever wanted in life. When I was growing up, I talked about this in life. I always wanted the white picket fence. I just wanted this beautiful family life. I wanted 2 kids, a boy, a girl, a dog, the picket fence, maybe a cat, and we were feeling good about ourselves. So I was like, okay, God, I'm gonna have that. I met the man of my dreams. He spoke eloquently. He said what seemingly was all the right things. He felt like home. He would always say, I feel like I'm finally home. You know, they just know what to say every time, don't it? And you know, I was like, okay, and I talk about it. The first young lady, Relisha, talked about the representative. I talk about that in my book, how the representative comes, because they know everything to say and to do. And I can see that some of you ladies have met the representative as well before you probably met your person or your spouse or the person that you're with now. You met that person that you thought was the one, right? So I talk about the person that I thought was the one. And then I talked about, I like how she was talking about love yourself. A lot of the issue was my mom and my dad had a tumultuous relationship as well. My dad was an alcoholic. He was also, he had PTSD because he was in the military, but also his sister, his older sister, was killed in a domestic violence situation. She was murdered by her lover. He shot her in the heart. So when I talk about generational curses as well in my book. What I mean by generational curses, if anybody's heard about generational curses, or you know anything about generational curses, it's something that starts in a generation and perpetuates on and on and on to the next generation. So my aunt was killed, and from what I would understand, they said I looked just like her. So every time my dad has other siblings as well. She cried. Sometimes she would cry. She said, "Oh, you look just like my sister," because they were very, very close. And of course, me and her became very close because they were very close. And her name was Clara. And so my mom, of course, and my dad had a tumultuous relationship, but they grew up in an atmosphere of my dad's side grew up in an atmosphere of a lot of alcohol, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of abuse, drug use, all those things. Now, you know how you got your mama's side and you got your dad's side? Okay, my mama's side was kind of like the save side. My dad's side was like the party side. Like, they like to turn up, they like to have a good time. You know, it was like the weekend was time from Friday when you got off up until Saturday night. Probably early Sunday morning was time to have a good time, right? But they did go to church on Sunday. Because they grew up in the old school way where, you know, I don't care what you did all night long, you going to church on Sunday. And so my dad was about 3 years old when his mother died. So he didn't have a lot of instruction, and not only that, he was dealing with some generational curses, and he was dealing with some things as well, right? So what I've learned in the time, I don't blame my dad, I don't blame my mom. I realized that we got to give our parents grace. And the reason why I say that is because I'm a parent, and I need grace. I needed my child, when I was, I had my first son with my abuser. And I would pray that now that he would look at me, and the parent that I am now and the parent that he probably got at first when it didn't work out well. And the reason why I say that is he probably may feel like he has the best mom in the world. But for me, I think about things that I did as a trauma response and that I was doing raising him and the mistakes that I made as a parent as well. So I'm going to go back into my history a little bit more to kind of give y'all an idea of how generational curses perpetuate. So my grandfather, which is my dad's father, I was born on December the 27th, 1984. My grandfather made a stop at his girlfriend's house before he came to the hospital to see me. So him and his girlfriend had a tumultuous relationship. They would fuss, they would fight, they would do all the things that they do, you know. Especially back in the day, you know, they would fight and couples would almost tear each other's head off, and they felt like it was a normal thing. So he went by, so she thought he was coming over for another, he probably drunk, alcoholism was a problem in my family, he wanted to fuss and fight. So I guess she was fed up, I don't know, I've been a sister that been fed up, and I've been a sister on the edge that don't know what he about to do when he on the way in, because we already know he already full of whatever he's full of. If that's anger, that's alcohol, whatever it is that's causing him to act this way, right? So she shot him through the door. She shot him through the door. So I never had the opportunity to meet my grandfather because he was on the way to the hospital to see me and stop by her house before he came to the hospital. So she was convicted of his murder, and she did go to prison. And so let's fast forward. And, you know, my mom, my dad used to fuss and fight, all the things, alcoholism, PTSD because he was in the military. You know, he would talk about the things that they did to colored men in the military. They would experiment on them, give them drugs, give them things, so forth and so on. So he had a lot of traumas that he could never really truly express growing up without a mom, and he was the youngest son growing up. So his other siblings had more time with their mother than he did. So I look back on his life and I say to myself, I have a chapter in my book called Daddy Issues. And it talks about how when you don't have the right type of father figure, you don't know what type of relationship to look for. If you never seen a healthy relationship before, then you don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So I got into a relationship. When I was coming up, I remember being a child. I've always been in church from the time I was born up until now. I would remember wanting to be, my first experience with church and Jesus, I wanted to be good. I felt like my gift in life was to be loving. And that was my purpose in life. If I could be something and I couldn't be anything else, I could be loving. So I always wanted to be good. So when I would go to into relationships, because of my daddy issues, I wanted the people in my life to stay. So what I would do for them to stay, I became a people pleaser, which made me then an empath. If you know anything about an empath, they are people who have a tendency to be chosen by narcissists and users and manipulators. Because you know what? They know you're a people pleaser. They know that you're an empath. They know that you want to make it right. You want to fix it. And something said to me, okay, all right, Miss Fix It. When are you going to fix you? When are you going to start working on you? You fixing everybody else's and you here for everybody else and you are a people pleaser. So I developed this condition called, it's basically a condition where you sacrifice yourself. It's called self-sacrifice schema. So what I would do in life is I would always choose other people's choices in their life over mine. I developed all of these conditions by just wanting to be good and wanting to be good enough. So I just kept trying to people please. I just kept trying to do this, do that. I would just be the perfect, I felt like I wanted to be the perfect wife, right? I wanted to be the perfect person for him. So what he would do is he would know how much I didn't have that father figure, those things in my life that I wanted, but he knew how badly I wanted a family, right? He knew how badly I wanted to have that white picket fence, right? So when he would start abusing me, he'd be like, or it started verbally, basically. Oh, you just sensitive because, whatever reason I'm sensitive. They gaslight you. They make you think that you're thinking something that's actually not happening, but they are doing exactly what you think they're doing. Love bombing. That's called, when she's talking about the honeymoon stage. Love bombing is when they know they done just messed up, but they're going to come back and treat you like a queen. They're going to give you gifts. They're going to get your nails done. They're going to get your hair done. They're going to say, I'm sorry, I'm never going to do it again. So it started like that. He would do little things, say little things that would hurt me, and then he would come back and make everything all right, right? So then he would make everything all right, and then he would come back, and then it got to a point where he'd be like, you just acting like that. You just don't know no better because you never had a dad. I had a dad, but he wasn't typically the ideal type of dad that I needed for a young lady, right? And he wasn't really the best example at the time for a young lady. He didn't really show up for me. He really didn't, talk to me about guys. And at that time, I grew up during an era, I don't know about anybody else, and maybe you didn't. What happened in your house, stay in your house. Not only that, you just didn't tell your business. You keep it to yourself, but not only do you keep it to yourself, you hurry up and fix it, hurry up and heal from it. People believe in telling you and rushing you and saying, get over it. How do you tell me to get over something that happened to me, that affected my life, and that affected how I operate as a human being? A lot of people don't know what abuse does. Abuse, what it does is when you're being abused, it starts to shape your nervous system. What is your nervous system? It's the thing that protects you, that tells you and keeps your body safe. And so what happens is, over time, abuse, it starts to affect your nervous system. So what happens is, you know how you touch the stove and the stove is hot? Okay, oh, that burned you. Like your nervous system said, that burned you, don't do that again, right? And so after a while, you keep beating down on the nervous system. You keep beating down on those things. You produce certain hormones when you're being abused as well. And one of the hormones that you produce is the hormone, the love hormone. So a lot of people are like, why am I so tied to this person? Why can't I get away from them? Some people call it soul ties, right? Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it spiritually, we can talk about it scientifically, but I want to be able to give it to you straight, right? So you don't understand, what is this strong connection? Why can't I break away? Because your body is telling you love, love, love. And it's actually not love, but what your body is doing when you're going through those type of abusive situations is producing the hormone that makes us love, right? So that's what makes us and keeps us and drawn into those relationships and unraveled into those relationships, because even our genetic makeup changes when we're being abused. And those are things that we don't know. Like, why she won't leave? Most people see it and say, oh, she's so pretty, why she can get any man she wants to. But I want this one. You know, so let's just be 100 about the things that we go through. And we don't really want to tell nobody. I hear everybody saying something. Same thing. My dad or my brother, my dad was a drunk, but baby, he'll pull up with a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like my brother, he about that life. I knew, hey, if I called him, it was going down, you know. So you knew that you wanted, once again, you knew that you wanted to protect everybody else. You just forgot about yourself because you were the least important thing, because your self-esteem was so low. Your self-esteem is so low that you think that you're not worth anybody even saying, anybody even coming to see about you. Like, I mean, it was times where I was just like hopeless, and I just was like, okay, I want to die. I'm just tired. It would be the smallest little things. He would have a dream and jump on me. Like, how you had a dream that I did something and jump on me? Like, where they do that at? You know, like, I ain't even do nothing. Somebody would walk by us in the store. If the person was slightly glimpse up at me or speak to me, that's who you messing around with, ain't it? You know, you cheating, ain't it? I know. And he would call me some of the most horrible names I have ever heard in my life. And I'd be thinking to myself, you be thinking to yourself, why am I tolerating this? But you don't know how to leave. And one day, I'll never forget, I'm wrapping it up, guys. Get the book to read the story. And this was sort of the things that I like to tell people, and I'm gonna close. We stayed together. I got pregnant with my son. I dropped out of college. I got pregnant with my son. And I have a chapter in the book called Left at the Altar. Y'all, it's the wedding day. The pictures out, the flowers out, the table decorated fine. I'm in my wedding dress. I'm up there in the bridal suite getting ready, right? And the music going for the wedding to start, y'all. And I'm up there and I'm gonna marry the man of my dreams, right? Y'all, tell me why this man left me at the altar on my wedding day. And I talk about that. And he left me at the altar, right? But he left me at God's altar. He left me where I needed to be. He put me back in the hands of God, because I was so enraveled into pleasing this man that I didn't even realize that I was worshiping and wanting him so bad that I forgot about what God actually wanted for my life. I wanted him so bad, y'all, when I tell you I could taste it. Boy, when you see that, I'm going to be honest with you, we ladies and we men and but we're human. When I tell you that oldest child of mine just so handsome, just like him, you know, just structured like him and everything. And I would say, this the man for me. I had made a decision, and I went against everything that God wanted for my life, because I wanted what I wanted. And I was willing to tolerate whatever I had to tolerate to get what I wanted. And then I was so mad with God. People don't talk about that. People thought it was the grace of God. No, I was mad. I was so mad at God, I wouldn't even look up. I was like, ooh, if I look up, I may see a cloud. He may wave or something at me. Don't you say nothing to me, God, because you have forsaken me. You left me. I have served you. I'm telling you what I was telling God. I was mad. I was like, See, people talk about, oh, he's so good, he saved me. I said, oh, no, God, I've been saved all my days. Yeah, I've been serving you all. What about the woman that does it the right way? Like that says, I'm going to wait until I get married. I'm going to do all the things that you told me to do. I'm going to serve him. I'm going to pay my tithes. And then I just met him and everything. I just do everything I do. Everything. I was pregnant at my wedding. I was pregnant at my wedding, but I was still trying to, what I thought was serving God and doing the right thing. So my family came upstairs. They were like, he's not coming. What you mean he's not coming? He's not coming in the next few minutes, or what you mean? We got a delay. You know, what you mean he's not coming? He's not coming. Y'all not getting married today. My brother had to walk up and tell me that, and I was pregnant with my first child, which was his firstborn son, and he not coming. Y'all, I hit the floor so hard. I fell in my wedding dress, pregnant, in the middle of the floor, flailing like a baby, and just screaming and screeching and crying. And I was just thinking to myself, God, why have you forsaken me? What have I ever done but love you and serve you, sing the songs at church, be at Sunday school, do revival, vacation Bible school, go to the church across the street, go to the church over there on the weekends when my church closed. What else is it, God, that you're asking of me that you can't give me? My husband. What do you want from me? That's what I was thinking. What do you want from me? But y'all, after the wedding, he love bombed me. He got me back. I know y'all like, that's crazy, right? Yes, he got love bombing and abuse is real. He got me back. He said, oh, we're going to get married. Let's just have a baby first. Y'all, listen, we got back together. We got a townhouse together. He was like, something said, this is what happened. He said, no, we can go ahead and get married. Something said, wait. Wait until the baby. I told him, I said, no, let's just wait until my son's name is Xavier. Xavier gets here, and we'll get married. We'll just do a private little beach ceremony after. Now, I had a whole wedding. I'm talking about the big wedding, flower girl, all that. But I was willing to settle and have a little cute little beach wedding. It was embarrassing. Think about it. You've been left at the altar from all your family. They're like, what's wrong? Why you did that? You know, people speculating. And when we first broke up, instead of him just being honest and saying he got cold feet, he told everybody he was scared that the baby wouldn't eat. So I done been through a lot, girl, just slammed. I said, Lord, I'm pregnant with my firstborn, his firstborn son, and he instead of him just saying, I just got cold feet, he just slandered me. And so, because everybody knew me and I had a rapport among people, So they was like, she's a sweet girl, what happened? Why would you do that? And so he had to make up something that made sense. So something said, wait. So I'll never forget one of the biggest nights of my life. What we were arguing about, my son was born. My son was maybe like a few weeks old, maybe a few months old. It's hard to remember exactly dates and times because of what happened that night. Oh my God, y'all, we was arguing, and we was arguing about paternity. What I did was, this how this happened. I found a number in his pocket. And I'm like, where did you get this number from? Baby, it had to be from the hospital while I'm having your son. So we arguing. He was like, nah, he lied. He was like, that's me. I just got this number to see if I can talk to somebody about paternity. Paternity? You didn't help me wipe, wash, clean, everything in the hospital, be there every day, and you still on this. Okay. So, not knowing that he was, going back to generational curses, he was a child that came out of, his father was extremely abusive to his mother. She would literally be beat to death. And he had a limp. And I never really, I asked him one day, where's the limp coming from? His dad took a crowbar and hit him in the leg. And he has a permanent limp. And a lot of these things I didn't know. You know, if you don't know, you just don't know. I didn't know what generational curses he was under. But anyways, the night of, we argued. Oh my God, he beat me. Oh, Jesus. When I'm talking about beat, I'm talking about like TV. Like, I'm talking about like Tina Turner times 10. Baby, I said, Lord, I was screaming, y'all, I'll never forget. I was screaming so loud. And one thing about them neighbors, they would not help me. I was like, baby, why y'all ain't helping me? I was screaming for help. Y'all, I just kept screaming, somebody please help me. And he was just, I could feel my hair being ripped from my head. I could feel everything. And it was just like yesterday, he would take in my head and he would just ram. He rammed me into the floor. Oh no, I could see blood everywhere, just blood all over the floor. He just rammed me. And he was just dragging me all from the kitchen to the living room, back and forth. He was just dragging me by my hair. I could just feel the hair just ripping from my scalp. And he was just beating me. I was just screaming. I never forget screaming and feeling that hopelessness, like I'm not gonna get out of this alive. And he started to strangle me, like choke me. And he was just choking me. And I was fighting. But after a while, somebody choking you long enough. If you've ever been choked, you know that you're gonna pass out. So, I mean, he was just strangling me. I never forget, it was in the middle of the kitchen floor. And he just kept going, and I felt the life just slipping from my body. I said, okay, this is it. My baby was a few months old, in the bassinet. And I said, Lord, my baby ain't gonna see me again. And I just felt the life just coming from my body. And as the light just went on away out of my body, I remember seeing blackness, darkness. You know, people were like, oh, I seen my auntie and my grandmama, and I seen the clouds. I seen darkness. I didn't see anything. But I heard, and like another young lady said, I heard the voice of the Lord. And I knew I was crossing over. I knew, because I could hear God saying, look at me. And some people be like, oh, you know, God was so kind, he was so nice. God was looking like, look at you. Look at you. Sometimes, let me tell you something, God don't always say what we want him to say. Sometimes he got to say something to get our attention. And I talk to God like I'm talking to y'all. I be like, God, what you doing? You're doing too much now. I got too much going on. When you come see about me, you know? So I said, he said, look at you. I was so angry. I said, God, how dare you? How dare you give me this man? No, I want this man, and I can't have him. God said, you picked him, not me. I didn't choose him, I didn't pick him for you. You picked him, not me. We do things out of free will and outside of the will of God, and we have to pay the consequences. Because we don't listen to God, and we want what we want when we want it, how we want it. And the devil knows exactly what we want. And he knows exactly what he wanted to look like when he said it to you, right? And that's what happens sometimes. And it's not always the devil, it's just we make a conscious decision to do what we want to do. And I said to myself, wow, God. I came out of the sense of being angry. I was still mad now. But I started to see God for who he was. God allows. He allows what we want to happen sometimes. And I wanted him, but I wanted him more than I wanted God at the time. And I had to renew my relationship with God because I was so angry with him. And one of my favorite scriptures is Jeremiah 29:11, and I take it with me everywhere I go. And it says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So what we have to remember is God wants good things for us. He doesn't want trash for us. And I'm not saying my son's father was trash. I'm just saying he doesn't want bad things for us. He wants the best for us. And sometimes we go through things not in God's will. Because they be like, how is it God's will for me to be abused? That's not his will. It was his will for me to go. No, it wasn't. That was the will of a person. But God allowed it. Because guess what? We are all imperfect and we all have free will and we can choose. And like she said, the representative comes, he didn't even believe in God. I didn't know that either. So God gonna put you with somebody you unevenly yoked with that don't even believe in me? Are you kidding me? I'm gonna put my baby girl that been serving me since she was knee-high singing peanut butter jelly and yes, Jesus loved me since she was 2 years old with a man that don't even believe in me? Are you crazy, girl? Are you crazy? God looking at me like, girl, you for real like it. You thought that was gonna really happen for you, huh? And I thank God that he left me at the altar, but he left me with God. What people believe is our rejection is God's protection. And I felt rejected, I felt lost. And the rest of it is in the book, guys. Get the book if you want to read it. I prolonged the time long enough, but I just wanted you to know that for somebody out here who has been rejected, who has been downtrodden, who feels like they're not enough, who feels like all hope is lost, who feels like I don't have it or I never will. I want you to remember who you are, and I want you to remember whose you are. And I want you to know that you are enough. And just because the person that you wanted or the thing that you wanted to happen has not happened, that does not mean that the will of God over your life is not for great things to happen for you. Great things can still happen for you, and great things are still happening for you, no matter what is going on and no matter what it looks like. Because God restored my life. He delivered, and I am the person that I am today because of the things that I've been through. And I want you to know that if I can leave anything with you all other than God's divine protection always sometimes looks like rejection. But all he's doing is detouring us. And just because it's not happening now doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. And it may be delayed, but it never will be denied. Because you are favored by God. You belong to him. And always remember Jeremiah 29 and 11 that it states that he wants you to prosper. He wants you to have good things. God bless you all. Thank you for listening.
Let me say this before you start, Jamaica. This community conversation is like a lot of times people think because of our name it's just for women, and it's not. This is for men and women, and we need more men in the room. Because this organization is not about men bashing. Because I would imagine we don't hate men. But these are things that, like you said, when we don't have those healthy models, when we don't know what that looks like, then we're trying to figure it out on our own, and we can find ourselves in situations that God didn't intend for us to be in. And so I just want to kind of put that disclaimer for the men that's in the room. It's not about bashing men, but I think it's so important that like men understand how women think and vice versa. We do know men go through abuse as well, but men are not as likely to speak up or speak out about it because of what you're taught. You know, from a child, you're taught, suck it up, don't cry, you don't do this. And so their sensitivity is what you call suppressed at an early age. And so this is about learning what is healthy and what's not healthy, but also being comfortable, being uncomfortable having these conversations, because most of you hear these generational cycles. I heard a lady say her family went through 5 generations of abuse, and someone asked her, well, how did that happen? She said, I didn't know. And she said, so she got to thinking about it. She said, it's because nobody ever talked about it. You know, it passed from one generation to the next. We just be quiet, don't talk about it, and we wonder why. It's not that it's new, It's because we hid it. We put it under the rug. Somebody said about grandma, grandpa, hey, if grandpa, granddaddy, they got into a fight on the weekend, got drunk, whatever, they got to love each other because they stayed together. But that don't always mean it was love. A lot of time it's about convenience. You know, when we think about one of the financial aspect of it, financial abuse is real. Because when you start with the finances and the other person doesn't have those finances, they become dependent in that way. So it's those subtle things that get you into that place, because nobody wakes up or say, I want to be abused in a relationship. It does just don't happen. You know, people that why, and I keep going back to it. Let's start saying why. Let's start listening. Let's start having more empathy. It's not about sympathy, because you're not helping them feel sorry for them. How do you help somebody that's going through it? First, you got to empower them. You can't convince me to come out of something if my self-esteem is broken, if I'm already torn down. So instead of focusing on why I need to be out, help me build up what's been already broken down. And a lot of times as we think about it, it was already broke down before we got into the relationship. It just magnified. So we have to have these community conversations. We can't be scared to talk about it, because that's what the enemy wants us to be quiet. And so their voices is not of that. They not. Do you think it's easy for any of us to get up here and talk about something like this? It's never easy. But how do we diffuse the enemy's tactic and his schemes against marriages, against relationships that are already failing before it starts? Because we got to start the conversation now. We have to have these conversations with our children. You know, we think, oh, they don't know, oh, they don't understand. And so what they don't know will still hurt them. So I thank y'all for listening, but I hope you hear beyond the physical abuse, and hear, when I walk away from here today, how can I educate and empower somebody else, if it's just me being a listening ear? Because sometimes it's not about answers. I don't want to answer. I just want to be heard. So I just wanted to share that. So I just say to the men in the room, it's not about man bashing, because it's not. But it's to educate, because even fathers, as you hear, fathers are so important to daughters. Like sometimes fathers may feel like, oh, well, they don't care. No, that is the beginning, because a mother can't teach a daughter what a father has to teach them. They're two different roles. You know, how do we teach, how do we know how to love? And the other thing we hear is love myself enough. But if I haven't had the model to know what love myself enough to mean, that could mean anything to anybody. So we have to also be careful with saying, you've got to love yourself more. Then that person may feel, well, I went through that because I didn't know how to love myself. And it may not be that's what you're saying, but that's what is implied. So we have to be careful of saying, well, just love yourself enough. Well, and going back to what I said, high standards don't always mean healthy standards. And so if my love was based on hurt from the beginning, that's what's etched in my mind. So that's what I'm related to. So we have to change the dynamics in our communities. We definitely have to change the dynamics in our churches, because most people, you see, we have the foundation of church. So how do we help build up what may be lacking in the home by, being that spiritual father, being that spiritual mother? Not about judgment. Because judgment, I might as well stay where I'm at. They give me ultimatums too. Why would I walk away? So we have choose our words wisely when we are seeing somebody go through it. And like she said, people, but a lot of times people don't know how to help. I think I, in high school, got mad at somebody, not because they wouldn't help, but I didn't even tell them, but I just thought they should. So we're not opening our mouth, but a lot of times people don't open their mouth because you'll be shut down about opening up. So we have to break the stigmas around domestic violence, because that's why a lot of people suffer in silence. So I just want to kind of put that disclaimer out there for the men. Hey, take this, take it to your friends. If you got sons, take it to your sons, because that's where it starts, as what we are taught growing up. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's going to be a true and honor to be here with you all. I have experienced so much. And I'm the author of Tour Inside. I wrote that book because can you hear me now? Okay. I'm an author of A Tour Inside. I wrote that book because I witnessed a lot of domestic violence. As a child, I saw my mother get beat by my father, and I actually lost my father to a domestic situation with his brother. And I just want to talk a little bit about healing, because that's what my book is based upon, healing. And when people hear the phrase, a tour inside, they often think about a destination. But the truth is, the most important journey we will ever take is not across cities, states, or countries. It's the journey within ourselves. Many of us spread years showing the world our smiles while hiding our scars. We learn how to survive, but we never learn how to heal. We become experts at carrying pain while pretending it isn't heavy. My story and the message behind the tour inside is about having the courage to look inward. It's about confronting the experiences that shaped us, the wounds we tried to bury, and the truths we are afraid to face. For many people, trauma begins long before they have the words to describe it. Childhood experiences, family dysfunction, loss, abuse, rejection, and disappointment can leave invisible marks that follow us into adulthood. Yet, despite everything we've endured, we are still here, and that's what's important. The fact that you're still standing means your story isn't over. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that healing does not begin when the pain disappears. Healing begins when we decide that our pain will no longer define us. It begins when we stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, how can I grow from what happened to me? What I witnessed at the age of 4 was my uncle killing my father in front of me. I lived with this all of my life without a single person ever asking, are you okay? How are you? And it felt like no one cared and that I was alone. I watched my mother get beat by different men repeatedly. It was like the cycle that you talk about. Started at her early age, 14, with my father, and years after years after years. She got pregnant with me, had me, got pregnant again. My father beat the child out of her, basically. So that one didn't make it. And I watched my mother suffer with an aneurysm. And I heard someone say, my mother went to prison when I was 12, 13. And she got with this man, and he tricked her. She was on drugs. He had her stealing, or she agreed to steal. I won't say he didn't put a gun to her head. And they got caught. She went to prison. She went downhill. She was her better looking self when I first saw her in the first visit. But after that, she just went downhill. She looked like a lady I never knew. She was allergic to sulfur. And at Tuckweiler, the nurses would give her sulfur after my grandmother told them that she was allergic. They still gave it to her. Her skin turned as black as the tablecloth. Her teeth started falling out. Her hair started falling out. She lumped over like she was like 90 years old. And she was really in her late 20s. She died at 31.
Wow.
And after all of those visits, that last visit, I heard someone say that this is their mother. Your story reminded me of so much of my story. I saw her we had to go behind the bars to see her the last visit. And that was really scary. And I never want to experience that again, but I left that place that day crying so hard, just crying. I cried all the way home. And I'm like, this is something that I should have experienced. And still, after all of this, no one ever asked me or my sister, are you okay? You know, is there anything we can do to help? No one ever asked us anything. And the last words I heard my mother say to me were when we visited her in the hospital when she was released from prison, ma'am, will you scratch my back? She didn't know who I was. That was so her, but she didn't know who any of us were. That was my first time ever seeing my uncle cry. Because she didn't look like herself. Then she didn't know us. Yeah, that is heartbreaking, still to this day. So the journey inside requires honesty. It requires us to acknowledge our hurt, our fears, and sometimes even our anger. But it also allows us to discover our strength, our resilience, and our purpose. I want everyone here today to understand this. You are more than the worst thing that has ever happened to you. You are more than your mistakes. You are more than your trauma. You are more than the labels others have placed on you. Your past may explain you, but it does not have to define you. Every scar carries a story. Every story carries power. The very thing that tried to break you may become the thing that helps someone else survive. When we share our stories, we give others permission to be honest about theirs. We create spaces where healing can happen. We remind people that they are not alone. That is why conversations about mental health, trauma, family struggles, and emotional wellness are so important. Silence often protects pain, but truth creates freedom. Today I encourage you to take your own tour inside. Take a look at the dreams you've abandoned. Take a look at the pain you've hidden. Take a look at the strength you've forgotten. Take a look at the person you've become despite everything you face. Because inside of you is a survivor. Inside of you is courage. Inside of you is purpose. And inside of you is a future greater than your past. As you leave here today, remember this. Healing is not a destination, it is a journey. Growth is not always comfortable, but it's necessary. And your story is not something to be ashamed of, it is evidence of your resilience. Thank you for allowing me to share this moment with you. My hope is that each of us continue the journey inward, because when we heal ourselves, we create the possibility to heal families, communities, and generations to come. Welcome to a tour inside. The journey starts with you. Thank you.
So what I want to do, I know we've been sitting for a while. I want to pull some tickets, but I also want